Part 1. The gate that changed everything. The sun was blazing over the military base, making the steel gates shine like silver swords in the heat. Two young guards stood at attention, their uniforms crisp, their expressions firm. But nothing could have prepared them for the woman storming toward them in high heels, nose raised, eyes sharp. "Out of my way," she barked, pointing a finger at the guards. "Do you even know who I am?" The taller guard blinked. "Ma'am, this is a restricted area. Please state your identity." She scoffed, loud enough to draw attention from nearby. "I'm the mother-in-law of your General Smith." "That's right, my son is Andrew Smith, and his wife is Sophie. Your precious general's daughter." The younger guard frowned. Something didn't add up. "Ma'am, we've already received a notice for the upcoming wedding," he said. "Commander Jason Johnson and Sophie Smith are engaged. You're not on any list." His voice was calm, but firm. The woman's face turned red. Behind her stood two kids, Andrew's younger siblings, both loud, spoiled, and ready to act. "She cheated on my son," the woman screamed suddenly, dropping to the ground, flailing and yelling. "There's no justice. The general's daughter is unfaithful." One guard stepped back, clearly startled. The other called for backup. Soon, the commotion reached inside the base, and higher-ups got involved. The woman and her kids were dragged to a side conference room, still screaming about betrayal and broken hearts. A senior officer called in Andrew, who looked like he wanted to vanish into thin air. "Andrew," his superior said, frowning, "Sophie is about to be married. If your family keeps creating trouble like this, even as a soldier, you'll be guilty of interfering with a military marriage. That's a serious offense." Andrew's ears turned red. I didn't tell them to do this." His mother wouldn't back down. "My son is excellent," she yelled. "You think a girl like Sophie would leave him? He's the most handsome man in 10 villages." The officer sighed. He pulled out a folder and slapped something on the table. "Wedding photos. Jason and Sophie." In the pictures, Sophie looked calm and beautiful, her arm looped gently through Jason's. Jason stood tall, decorated, with a quiet strength that needed no words. The officer pointed at the image. "Commander Jason Johnson became a brigade commander at a young age. He has honor, looks, and talent. And your son? Spent his days chasing after Emily while dating Sophie." Andrew froze. The officer turned to him, voice sharp. "Sophie was loyal. Your daughter, Emily, was the one sneaking around. Sophie's wedding is happening, and your family shows up to ruin it. If you can't control them, then turn in your uniform and leave." Andrew dropped his head. "I'll fix this," he said, barely above a whisper. His mother yanked him by the collar. "Bring Sophie back," she hissed. "Her father's a big shot. Without her, what do we have? Your brother and sister are still hungry. I came all this way, I'm not leaving empty-handed." Panic rose in Andrew's chest. Backed into a corner, he did what he always did when desperate. He turned to Emily. Emily's eyes lit up like a drowning woman spotting land. "Andrew," she cried, rushing into his arms. "You have to save me this time." She was in trouble. Big trouble. Rumors about her past had resurfaced. Her father, once a known bandit, was being talked about again. Her record was under review. Her training was paused. And if they found out she had hidden any part of her past during her enlistment? Prison. "I never wanted anything but to serve my country," Emily wept. "Why is Sophie doing this?" One word from her father, and all of this could go away. Andrew looked down at the woman in his arms. He'd always believed she was fragile, beautiful, and needed him. But now, even he wasn't sure what to think. Then his mother came out of nowhere and slapped Emily across the face. "You little snake," she shouted. "You seduced my son and ruined everything. How dare you still show your face?" Emily shrieked and fought back, and suddenly the base grounds were filled with the sounds of two women clawing at each other like wild cats. By the time Andrew managed to separate them, he looked like a man who had been through war. And then, he came to see me. I was sitting calmly on the porch, watching the sun dip below the edge of the compound. He stumbled up the steps, eyes full of something between sorrow and regret. When he saw my face, still young and untouched by time, his breath caught. "Sophie," he said, "what if I told you? I've already lived this life once? Would you believe me?" I said nothing. So he sat beside me and began to talk. He talked about our marriage in the past life. The happy times, the little joys, and mostly, his promotions. "Do you know what rank I was when I retired?" he said, puffing out his chest. "Same as your father. That made you a general's wife. What an honor." He even brought up Emily, remembering fondly how she had later become a troop leader, then a nationally celebrated artist. "I bet you're jealous now," he said. "Who would have thought she'd be such a big deal?" I stared at him and laughed coldly. "And what about me?" I asked. "I joined the military before you. I had better skills than Emily. Shouldn't my rank have been higher too?" His smile froze. In his mind, I was still the woman who had always stood behind him. Quiet. Supportive. His shadow. "You and I were together for decades," he said softly. "You were happy. Did we have kids?" I asked. He hesitated, then nodded. "A boy and a girl. It was a good life." I looked away, heart steady. "Then why did you tell me, half a year ago, that you were infertile?" His face paled. He tried to grab my hand, to explain something, anything. But no words came. After a long pause, he whispered, "Maybe, some things didn't go the way I said." But I realized something. "I love you. After you died, I couldn't sleep. I prayed for a second chance. Now I have it." His hand reached out again. "Let me help Emily finish this transition. Then I'll marry you. We'll have real children. A real life." I yanked my hand back. "Andrew, I'm happy without you." Just then, Jason appeared in the distance, walking toward me. Andrew backed off, but shouted after me in desperation. "You still love me." "I know you do. You withdrew from Unit 05, didn't you? You did that because of me." He dropped to his knees. "Fine. I'll beg. I'll marry you now. Forget the wedding plans, I don't care if the groom changes. Let's do it." Jason raised an eyebrow, fists clenched. But before he could act, I did. I kicked Andrew square in the face. "Do you really think you belong at the wedding Jason and I planned together?" I said, my voice sharp. "Yes, I withdrew from Unit 05. I left the performing arts troupe. But none of that had anything to do with you." Jason looked at me in surprise, and I took his hand. "After the wedding, we're heading to the front lines together," I said. Behind me, Andrew shouted, "Sophie! You can't go. It's a death sentence. Jason will die next month in the Lausanne campaign." But I didn't turn around. Because this time I wasn't just rewriting my story. I was rewriting Jason's. Part 2, The storm approaches the military base felt different after Andrew's outburst. The air was thick with tension, like the calm before a storm. Jason and I stood side by side, hand in hand, facing the uncertain future that loomed ahead. We were both ready for what was coming, but the road was fraught with danger. I could feel the weight of it pressing on my shoulders. The next morning, we packed our things, enough to last us a few days in the field. The Lausanne campaign was imminent, and all soldiers were expected to be in top shape. As I went through my gear, my thoughts kept drifting back to the conversation with Andrew. His words had shaken me more than I wanted to admit. "I'll beg. I'll marry you now. Forget the wedding plans, I don't care if the groom changes." It had sounded desperate, but there was something more in his voice. A longing that I couldn't ignore. And yet, I knew I couldn't let myself fall back into that trap. Jason turned to me, his expression unreadable. You okay? I nodded, though the truth was that my mind was racing. It wasn't just the Lausanne campaign that worried me, it was everything. The past, the future, Andrew's sudden reappearance in my life. My fingers tightened around the strap of my bag. We should go, I said quietly, forcing myself to focus on the mission. Jason gave me a small, understanding smile. He always seemed to know when I needed space and when I needed him by my side. Let's go, then. The sooner we leave, the sooner we can be done with this. We walked together toward the transport trucks, the noise of the base growing louder as soldiers rushed about, preparing for deployment. The atmosphere was charged with the kind of energy only a military campaign could bring. Everyone had their roles to play, and everyone knew the risks. This wasn't just another assignment, it was a fight for survival. As we climbed into the back of the truck, I took one last look at the base. The place where everything had begun. The place where I had spent years building my identity, my strength, and my future. But as the truck pulled away, I couldn't shake the feeling that the life I had built was slipping through my fingers. The journey to Lausanne was long and silent. Jason and I barely spoke, each of us lost in our thoughts. The landscape outside the truck was a blur, the mountains and forests passing by in a haze. It felt as though time itself had slowed down. When we finally arrived at the front lines, the reality of the situation hit me like a punch to the gut. The air was thick with smoke, and the sounds of gunfire echoed in the distance. Soldiers were everywhere, moving with purpose, their faces grim and focused. Jason led me through the camp, his hand firm on my back as he guided me past rows of tents and makeshift barricades. There was a sense of urgency in the air, and I could feel it seeping into my bones. This was no ordinary mission, it was a battle for survival. As we reached our designated tent, Jason turned to me. Stay close. The situation here is unpredictable. I will, I said, though my heart was already racing with the knowledge that this could be the last time we saw each other. The days passed in a blur of strategy meetings, training drills, and brief moments of rest. The tension on the front lines was palpable, and every soldier was on edge, knowing that the next moment could bring a firefight, an ambush, or worse. Despite the chaos around us, Jason and I managed to steal a few moments together. Each time he looked at me, I could see the same determination in his eyes, the same resolve that had always made him a natural leader. But there was something else, something softer. A concern that had only grown stronger since we arrived at Lausanne. One evening, after a particularly grueling training exercise, Jason pulled me aside. Sophie, I need to talk to you, he said, his voice low. I followed him to a quiet corner of the camp, away from the noise of the soldiers preparing for the next day. The night was cool, the air crisp with the promise of rain. Jason's face was shadowed in the dim light, but I could see the intensity in his eyes. I'm worried about you, he admitted, his voice tight. This place, it's dangerous. And I can't protect you from everything. I took his hand in mine, squeezing it reassuringly. I'm not afraid, I said, though my heart skipped a beat. The truth was, I was terrified. But I couldn't show that. Not to Jason. Not to anyone. He looked at me, his expression softening. I know you're strong, Sophie. But I need to know you'll be safe. I'll be fine, I promised. We'll make it through this together. The next day, everything changed. We were in the middle of a routine patrol when the sound of gunfire shattered the calm. The soldiers around us immediately fell into formation, weapons raised, their eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of the enemy. I could hear the distant roar of trucks, the screech of metal, and the cries of soldiers as they scrambled to respond. Jason's voice cut through the chaos. Sophie. Get to cover. But it was too late. The explosion came out of nowhere, sending a shockwave through the camp. The ground beneath my feet seemed to crumble, and I was thrown to the ground, the world spinning around me. The sound of ringing in my ears drowned out everything else. I struggled to my feet, my vision blurry, but I could hear Jason's voice calling my name. I stumbled forward, desperate to reach him, but another explosion rocked the ground, throwing me backward. The last thing I saw before everything went dark was Jason's face, his eyes wide with panic as he reached out to me. Part 3, a new beginning. I woke to the sharp sting of antiseptic in the air. My head throbbed, and I could feel the weight of something heavy pressing down on me. My vision was blurry, but I knew instantly that I wasn't in the field anymore. The sterile white walls and the soft beeping of a monitor told me I was in a hospital, somewhere safe. My first thought was Jason. Where was he? Was he okay? I tried to move, but pain shot through my body, and I gasped, my breath coming in short bursts. Someone had bandaged my arm, but there was nothing I could feel beyond the deep ache that seemed to radiate from every part of me. I closed my eyes, trying to calm myself, but the image of Jason's face before the explosion kept haunting me. Sophie! Get to cover! His voice echoed in my mind. Suddenly, I heard footsteps. A figure appeared at the door, and I turned my head, trying to focus. The person stepped into the room, and I could make out his silhouette in the dim light. Sophie, the man said, his voice full of relief. Thank God you're awake. I blinked, still struggling to clear my head. The voice was familiar, but not one I expected to hear. Andrew. My heart sank. What was he doing here? Wasn't he part of the mess I was trying to leave behind? What happened? I managed to ask, my voice hoarse. Andrew approached the bed cautiously, his face tight with worry. You were caught in the explosion. Jason is missing, Sophie. I stared at him, disbelief flashing across my face. What do you mean, missing? He was pulled from the rubble, Andrew continued, his eyes dark with sorrow. But he didn't make it out unscathed. They're still looking for him. They're saying I didn't need him to finish. My heart stopped in that moment, and for the first time, I realized how much Jason meant to me. More than I had ever fully allowed myself to admit. The thought of him not being there, of losing him forever, felt like a weight crushing my chest. Tears welled in my eyes, and I tried to swallow the lump in my throat. No. Jason can't be gone. He can't be. Andrew's face softened with sympathy, but it only made the pain worse. I'm sorry, Sophie. I know how much he meant to you. The room felt too small, too suffocating. My mind spun with confusion, with grief, and with the overwhelming sense that everything I had fought for had just crumbled in an instant. I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't. But deep down, I knew Andrew wasn't lying. I turned my face toward the window, willing myself to steady my breath. The memories of Jason flooded my mind. His laugh, his determination, the way he always had a plan, always made me feel safe. But now, I was alone. What happens now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. We wait, Andrew said softly. We hope. And we continue fighting. Because that's what Jason would want. The days that followed were a blur of reports, meetings, and endless speculation. Jason's absence was felt by everyone, soldiers, commanders, even those who had only known him in passing. The camp had lost a leader, a beacon of hope, and we all felt the void his disappearance had left behind. I had been given a few days of rest, but it felt impossible to truly recover. Each night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if Jason would be found or if he had already been lost to the battlefield. My thoughts kept returning to the last conversation we'd had, to the plans we had made, to the future I had hoped to share with him. Meanwhile, Andrew had become a constant presence at my side, though I couldn't bring myself to feel grateful for his support. He was there, trying to console me, but I didn't need his pity. I didn't need anyone to tell me that everything would be okay when I knew that it wouldn't be. And yet, Andrew wasn't about to give up. Every morning, he came to check on me, offering food, supplies, and a shoulder to lean on. His kindness was hard to ignore, and despite myself, I found comfort in his persistence. Sophie, he said one evening, as we sat outside the tent, watching the sunset. I know things between us haven't been easy. But I need to ask you something important. I glanced at him, wondering where this conversation was headed. What is it? He looked at me, his eyes searching mine as if he were looking for something, or maybe trying to find the right words. I know you love Jason. I saw the way you two were together. But you don't have to carry this burden alone. I'm here for you, Sophie. I always have been. I looked away, my heart aching. Andrew, let me help you, he said, reaching out to take my hand. I'll be here for you in whatever way you need. You don't have to grieve alone. The words felt like a trap, and I recoiled instinctively, pulling my hand away. I don't need your help, I said firmly. I don't need you. The silence between us stretched thin, and I could feel the tension in the air. But despite everything, I couldn't deny the truth that lurked beneath his words. Andrew was trying, in his own way, to be the person I needed. But I couldn't give him that. Not while I was still holding on to Jason's memory, to the hope that somehow, Jason would come back. Days turned into weeks, and the situation at the front lines grew increasingly tense. There were no more explosions, no more immediate threats, but the uncertainty hung in the air. Every soldier knew the risks, knew that any day could bring a fresh wave of violence, a new battle to fight. But none of that mattered to me. I couldn't focus on the war when my heart was consumed by the thought of Jason. Where was he? Why hadn't they found him? And then, one evening, after a long day of training exercises, there was a knock on my tent door. I opened it, expecting to see one of the soldiers with an update or a report, but instead, it was someone I hadn't expected. Sophie, the man said, his voice familiar yet strange. I have news about Jason. Part 4, the truth unfolds. The man standing in the doorway of my tent was not who I expected. I had never seen him before, but there was something about his demeanor that struck me instantly. His eyes were full of urgency, and his uniform marked him as someone important. He didn't look like one of the regular soldiers. Sophie, he said again, his voice calmer now that I was fully facing him. I have news about Jason. My heart skipped a beat, and my breath caught in my throat. I stood frozen for a moment, unsure of what to say. What do you mean, news about Jason? The man stepped into the tent, and as he closed the door behind him, the weight of the situation seemed to settle on me. He took a deep breath, as if preparing to share something heavy, and my anxiety only grew. I'm Lieutenant Commander Cole, he began, and I've been part of the team searching for your fiancé, Jason. We've been working day and night to locate him. I nodded, feeling a mix of hope and dread. And? Have you found him? Is he? The lieutenant's face tightened. We found something, Sophie. But it's not the news we were hoping for. I felt a chill run down my spine. My mind immediately began to race, dreading the worst. But I didn't want to hear what I feared. Still, I had to ask. What do you mean? What did you find? He hesitated, and that hesitation was enough to confirm my worst fears. We found his body. Not far from the explosion site. I felt the world tilt beneath me. The words didn't make sense. How could this be real? Jason couldn't be gone, he couldn't be. The man standing before me wasn't someone who would deliver false hope, though, and I could see it in his eyes. No. No, this couldn't be happening. My knees buckled beneath me, and I sank into a chair, my hands gripping the edge of the table. Jason, I whispered, my voice barely audible. No. Lieutenant Cole gave me a moment to process, but the silence was suffocating. The only sound was my ragged breathing as I tried to hold myself together. We're still investigating the area, he continued, his voice softer now. We're hoping to find out more. But right now, we can't be sure of anything else. I shook my head, the tears coming now, unbidden. I need to see him. I need to know. Cole's face softened, and he gave a reluctant nod. I understand. I'll make arrangements for you to see him. It's the least we can do. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to focus on the present. Jason. My heart ached for him, for the promise of a future that would never come. And the weight of his absence threatened to crush me. The next few hours felt like a blur. I couldn't remember how I made it to the morgue or how I stood outside the cold, sterile room where Jason's body was held. But I did. I had to see him. I had to say goodbye. Lieutenant Cole stayed by my side, offering quiet support as we walked down the hall, his footsteps echoing in the silence. My heart was racing, and the walls seemed to close in on me. I was so close, yet I couldn't bring myself to walk through that door. I stopped just before the threshold, my breath caught in my throat. What if it's not him? What if it's someone else? What if, Sophie, Cole said gently, placing a hand on my shoulder. I know this is hard. But you need closure. You need to know the truth. I closed my eyes, forcing myself to take a deep breath. There was no denying it. I had to face this. I had to see him one last time. With a shaky hand, I opened the door. The room was cold, clinical, and empty save for a gurney covered by a white sheet. I walked toward it, my heart pounding in my chest. The closer I got, the harder it was to breathe. Each step felt like a weight pushing down on me. Finally, I reached the gurney, and with trembling hands, I pulled the sheet back. There he was. Jason. The sight of him sent a shockwave of grief through my entire body. His face was pale, his eyes closed, his body still. The man who had once been so full of life, so full of promise, now looked like a stranger. My heart shattered into pieces as I knelt beside him, touching his cold hand. The warmth I had once felt when he held me was gone, replaced by the cold emptiness of reality. Tears flooded my eyes, and I whispered his name, my voice breaking. Jason. I'm so sorry. I should have been there. I never should have let you go. But there was no reply, no reassurance. Just the silence of the room, broken only by my sobs. The funeral was a blur, a haze of faces and emotions. I couldn't focus on anything other than the hole in my heart. It was as if the world had moved on, but I was left behind in a place where nothing made sense. Jason was gone, and everything I had fought for felt meaningless. But there was one person who refused to let me fall completely into despair. Andrew. In the days following the funeral, he seemed to be everywhere. He checked in on me, made sure I had everything I needed, and insisted on being there whenever I needed to talk. I wanted to push him away. I wanted to shut him out and grieve alone, but he was persistent. Let me help you, Sophie, he said one evening, as we sat together in the camp. I know you're hurting. I can see it. But you don't have to do this alone. I'm not doing this with you, Andrew, I snapped, my frustration boiling over. I don't need you. Not now. Not ever. But he didn't back down. He just sat there, patiently, and let the silence between us stretch. You're wrong, he finally said, his voice quiet but firm. You're not the only one who's lost someone. I've lost my chance with you. And I regret that every single day. But I'm not going anywhere, Sophie. I'm here for you. For as long as you need me. Andrew's words hung in the air, thick with meaning. And though I tried to shut him out, to keep my heart closed off, part of me couldn't deny the comfort I found in his presence. Jason was gone. But Andrew, for better or worse, was here. I didn't know what the future held, or if I would ever heal from this loss. But one thing was certain, the road ahead would not be easy. And it was a road I would have to walk, whether I was ready for it or not. Part 5, the crossroads of fate. It had been weeks since Jason's funeral, but the weight of his loss still hung heavily over me. The emptiness in my chest was constant, gnawing at me like an insatiable hunger. No matter how many times I tried to distract myself, to force myself to move on, my heart refused to forget him. But life didn't care about my grief. It kept moving forward, and I had to move with it, whether I was ready or not. Andrew, despite my resistance, continued to be a constant presence in my life. He'd show up at odd hours, bringing me food, checking in on me, even sitting quietly when I needed space. His persistence was infuriating, but somewhere deep down, I knew he was only trying to help. He was the only person who seemed to understand the depth of my pain, though I couldn't understand why he had to be the one to carry me through it. One evening, as I sat on the edge of my cot, staring into the distance, I heard the familiar sound of boots crunching on the gravel outside my tent. I didn't need to look up to know who it was. "Andrew," I said quietly, my voice raw from the countless tears I'd shed over the past few weeks. "Why are you still here?" He stood in the doorway for a moment, not answering. Then, without a word, he walked inside and set a small bag on the table. "I know you're not ready," he said, his voice steady but gentle. "But I want you to hear me out. You don't have to do this alone, Sophie. You don't have to keep carrying this weight on your own." I turned my face away, unable to meet his gaze. "You don't get it, Andrew. You can't replace Jason. You can't fix this." "I'm not trying to replace him," he said, his tone firm but kind. "I'm just here for you, Sophie. And I won't stop being here. Not until you tell me to leave." There was a long pause between us. I didn't respond, didn't know what to say. My emotions were tangled, grief, anger, resentment, and something I couldn't quite identify, all swirling together. "You don't owe me anything," Andrew continued, his voice softer now. "But you deserve to be happy. You deserve to heal. And I'll be here, supporting you, no matter what." It was tempting to snap at him, to tell him to leave me alone, to push him away like I had done so many times before. But something inside me stopped me. Maybe it was the fact that I didn't want to be alone anymore. Maybe it was because, despite everything, I did care for him, just not in the way he wanted. But did I have a choice? Was there even a future for me without Jason? I didn't know. I stood up abruptly, trying to fight back the emotions threatening to overwhelm me. I can't talk about this right now." Andrew didn't try to stop me as I walked past him. He just watched me go, his expression unreadable, and I couldn't decide if that made me feel better or worse. Days passed, and Andrew's persistence never wavered. He was always there, waiting for me to give him an answer, to accept his help, to let him in. But I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to move on, to let go of the love I had for Jason. And yet, part of me feared that if I didn't move on soon, I might lose everything, lose myself, lose my future. One evening, after a long and exhausting day, I found myself alone in the mess hall, picking at my food. The usual chatter and laughter of my fellow soldiers seemed distant, almost irrelevant, as I sat there, lost in my thoughts. Then, the door swung open, and in walked Andrew, as usual. He looked around, spotting me in the corner, and made his way over. This time, I didn't push him away. I didn't even flinch when he sat down beside me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. It was as if we were both waiting for something, waiting for me to finally speak the words that had been building up inside me. Finally, I broke the silence. "Why do you keep doing this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why do you keep coming back, even when I push you away?" Andrew's gaze softened, and he leaned in slightly. "Because, Sophie, I can't just sit by and watch you destroy yourself. I care about you. And no matter what, I'm not giving up on you." I shook my head, feeling the frustration and confusion rise in me again. "I don't want your pity, Andrew. I don't need you to save me." "I'm not trying to save you," he replied calmly. "I'm just trying to give you something to hold on to. Because I know you don't want to be alone. And you don't have to be." His words hit me harder than I expected. I didn't want to admit it, but he was right. I didn't want to be alone. I was afraid of being alone. But could I let go of Jason? Could I move on and allow someone else into my heart? The idea terrified me. "I don't know what to do," I said, my voice breaking. "I don't know if I can love again. Not after everything with Jason." Andrew didn't respond immediately. Instead, he reached across the table and gently placed his hand on mine. For a moment, I froze, but then I felt the warmth of his touch, grounding me, reminding me that I wasn't completely alone. "You don't have to love again right away," he said quietly. "But you deserve to heal. You deserve to find peace. And I'll be here, every step of the way, whether you're ready or not." For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to let my guard down, even just a little. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know what the future held. But maybe, just maybe, there was room for me to heal. And maybe, just maybe, Andrew could be the one to help me find my way back. Later that night, as I lay in my cot, staring up at the ceiling, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't a grand epiphany or a sudden moment of clarity. It was small, quiet, a realization that maybe I didn't have to carry this burden alone. Maybe there was a chance for me to rebuild, to move forward, even if that meant taking one hesitant step at a time. Andrew's words echoed in my mind, "You deserve to heal." I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time in a long while, I allowed myself a flicker of hope. Part 6. Rewriting the future. The morning sun was just beginning to rise over the horizon, casting a soft golden glow over the military base. The air was crisp, and everything seemed quiet and still, as if the world itself was holding its breath. For the first time in what felt like forever, I woke up with a sense of calm. The usual heaviness in my chest was gone, replaced with a fragile sense of peace. I didn't know what had changed, but something inside me had shifted. It had been a long road since Jason's death, and the struggle to move on had been harder than I ever imagined. But as I lay there in the quiet of the morning, I realized that I was finally ready to face the world again. Not as the broken woman I had been, but as someone who was learning to rebuild, to heal, to live. The decision to let go of the past had been the hardest thing I'd ever done. But the more I thought about it, the more I understood that holding on to the memories of Jason wasn't a betrayal, it was simply a way for me to honor him. And now, I was ready to honor him in a different way. Andrew had been patient. He had waited for me to find my way back, to trust him, to trust myself. And for the first time, I realized that I didn't need to rush. I didn't need to make any grand decisions. All I needed to do was take the next step forward, and that was enough. It wasn't long before I found myself at the training grounds, the familiar sounds of boots hitting the dirt and the clatter of military drills filling the air. I was here to make a difference, to prove to myself that I could still stand tall, even in the wake of my grief. Andrew was already there, standing at the edge of the field, his eyes scanning the horizon as if waiting for me. When he saw me approach, he smiled softly, but there was a deep understanding in his gaze. He knew I wasn't the same person I had been when we first met. "Ready for the day?" he asked, his voice gentle, but with that familiar determination. I nodded. "Ready." He didn't say anything more, he didn't need to. We both knew that the journey wasn't over, that the scars would remain. But there was something in the air between us, a shared understanding that we had both come a long way, together and apart. We trained side by side, pushing each other to our limits, challenging ourselves in ways we hadn't before. There was no more bitterness, no more resentment. Just two people, doing what they were born to do, working to create something better, something new. Weeks passed, and slowly, the base began to feel more like home. The weight of my past didn't disappear, but it became something I could carry without suffocating under it. Andrew continued to be there for me, but he didn't push me. He gave me the space I needed to find my own path, and that made all the difference. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, I found myself sitting on the steps of the mess hall, watching the colors of the sky shift from gold to pink to deep violet. It was a quiet moment, a peaceful moment, and I realized that this was the first time in so long that I felt truly content. Andrew joined me, sitting down beside me without saying anything. We sat in comfortable silence, the sounds of the bass fading into the background. It was as if, in this moment, we didn't need words to understand each other. Eventually, he spoke, his voice quiet but steady. "Sophie, I've always known you were strong. But I've also seen how much you've suffered. And I want you to know that I'm here, no matter what happens." I turned to him, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. You've already done more for me than I could ever ask for. Andrew smiled, a rare smile that reached his eyes. I don't need thanks. I just need you to be happy. I think I'm starting to be, I said softly. Not completely. But I'm getting there. Good, he said, his smile widening. Because you deserve it. As the days went by, I began to find a new sense of purpose. I had always known that I was capable of more than just being a soldier, more than just being someone's wife or someone's heartache. I had a voice, I had strength, and I had a future to build. The work we did on the front lines was dangerous, but it was also necessary. Each mission, each challenge, felt like a step toward something greater. And with Andrew at my side, no longer as a potential lover, but as a partner in arms, I felt a sense of pride that I hadn't known in years. It wasn't until much later, after another successful mission, that I finally understood what I needed to do. The old fears, the old wounds, had faded into the background. And when Andrew came to me with that familiar look in his eyes, I no longer hesitated. I'm ready, I said, meeting his gaze firmly. Andrew's expression softened, and for a moment, I saw the man who had been by my side all along, not the man who had once tried to claim me, but the man who had learned to respect my strength, my independence. You're sure? He asked, his voice low. I nodded. I'm sure. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. No longer lost, no longer shackled by the past. I had rewritten my own future, and it was mine to shape, mine to own. The days ahead were uncertain, but I no longer feared them. I had a partner, I had a purpose, and I had a future that was mine to build. No more running from the past. No more living in the shadow of what could have been. I was ready to write the next chapter of my life, and this time I was going to make it my own.